What's up? Welcome to the Existential Stoic Podcast. I'm Danny, everybody. Randy. Hey,
Yo,
Randy.
Danny.
I forgot about that part to say hi. Jeez, we're messed. Oh my God. But yeah,
Mhm.
I was just thinking about this actually like the last second. But because you mentioned in our earlier episode, you're talking about, mind-body connection and stuff. What do you think of the self? Like, how do you identify the self? And it's like a very not easy question to answer. But like, when you think of yourself, do you think of like a self? Do you think of like
Yeah. Well, it's the brain thinking of itself.
right? Which is
And
weird.
yeah, and there's the conscious and the subconscious as well. So there's all of that. I think it's just a big, massive confusion.
Yeah.
And I'm having a heck of a time learning about it recently. I've been listening to a bunch of books about it, like the Mind Body Prescription and Mind Over Back Pain and all this and healing back pain and the divided mind, all this crazy stuff about how the mind and body are connected, and medicine has kind of screwed up for a long time by thinking that they're separate.
Well, it treats them as totally separate, right? It looks just at the physical symptoms of the body rather than taking into account the mind at all and its
Hmm.
relationship to those symptoms. But it's interesting because that's always been an issue in philosophy for the longest time was like the mind-body problem, right? And like specifically like how the mind can have influence on the body and how do we treat the mind? Because like for the longest time, like in ancient philosophy, consciousness, the mind was treated as very like more like, especially in Western, more like soul, sort of, if that makes sense. So like
Hmm.
this thing that wasn't part of the visible world, as Plato like to say, right? And so then if that's the case, how do they connect? Right? Descartes, I think he identified was like the pituitary gland or something as the place where they like interact or
Hmm.
something. It's interesting because it is a weird problem. Like, we think of ourselves as this brain or conscious self in its body. And like even the brain, is that your consciousness or is that the physical thing still?
Hmm.
Like how do they relate? Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I mean, even for these like science mongers who think that like, oh, science, blah, blah, blah. But like even scientifically, the mind is completely interlinked with the body because you have the brain, which is a bundle of nerves that goes down to a spinal cord. And then you have all these nerves
Yeah.
shooting off of the spinal cord, and they go out to pretty much every cell, every muscle, everything throughout the entire body. And whatever they don't touch can be influenced by blood and other fluids in the body, which carry hormones which then
Yeah.
regulate everything in the body. And these hormones are created in the brain, in the pituitary gland, like you mentioned, and other places. And it's just like to think that they're separate is just crazy.
Yeah. And what's funny too though is like how many things too like can in order for like from adaptation like bypass like that necessity of having to connect to the brain itself, like when reflexes and stuff, right? Like you need an immediate response. So they can trigger without having to be connected, like informed from the brain, I guess you'd say, like a signal directly from it, which is really
Yeah.
interesting too.
Yeah.
But I brought that up.
I just had the
No, go.
craziest mind body experience the past couple months. Cause like
Yeah.
right around Christmas, I got this insane back, shoulder, and arm pain. And it was crazy. Like I was on the highest dose of all types of medications. And then found this book, Healing Back Pain, listened to it, started listening to the other books the guy wrote, and the pain went away on its own. Like
Yeah.
basically,
Which is
once I
crazy.
learned that the pain was there just to keep me from looking at some emotional stuff, and I started looking at some emotional stuff, the pain just went away. And it it boggles the mind. Ooh, look what I did there. It boggles the mind.
Nice. Do you think you did hurt yourself initially and then like,
It's quite possible. So like one thing that he talks about in the books, and this goes back to Freud even, is the symptom imperative. So it's like this these symptoms that like move places. Because I have had since since I was in veterinary school, going against my will, doing something that I didn't want to do, I started to have shifting body pain. I had sciatica and lower back pain and neck pain and knee pain, and then this most recent time shoulder pain. And it's all stuff that like has kind of come and gone without any real reason for it.
and no real like end to it. It just goes away, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. It just comes and it goes.
Yeah.
And like I take a look back at all these things, and there were certain times, certain things that I was going through that could have triggered it, maybe sometimes it can be triggered by an injury, but then your mind latches onto that and be like, well, that must be because of this. And then because your subconscious mind is just really trying to protect you, it thinks that you're not strong enough to handle these emotions and this psychological stuff. So it's like, oh, I'll just give him this body pain because that'll distract him from whatever could ruin his life.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Nietzsche had this idea of the self as like he called it like community of souls. In a way, we have like many selves, and he thought of it as like our instincts and drives, like, so like you want to do one thing and you want to do something else. And like you ever feel that like you're fighting with yourself? That's like the
Mm-hmm.
idea. But he
Yeah.
also had this idea that, he called it the internalization of drives or like stuff we can't express outwardly. And a lot of times that's because of like social norms, uh, sense of obligation, whatever. We hold things in, they get directed inward. They still get expressed
Mm-hmm.
because they have to be expressed to be realized. And instead they get expressed internally, which causes like guilt feelings, pain, all these negative things. And it's really interesting because like it's right in the same wheelhouse as that, right? This idea that like a healthy mind will feel better because we're actually like expressing everything the right way and not keeping it in or internalizing it or letting it be expressed some other way. Because I noticed I would stress myself like a lot of times like I don't I don't communicate when I'm in stress and stuff, so it's like an unconscious thing. And then I end up
Mm-hmm.
feeling sick, and it's
Yeah.
like I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
sick. Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah,
It's very
totally.
amazing.
Yeah. So this has been quite a learning experience for me because I'm just, you know, it, like, I mean, you remember this from a couple months ago. We would be
Oh yeah.
recording and I would be here like this, like just like in ungodly pain, just trying to be like get through the day. And it just went away. I tried
Okay.
everything. I tried all types of medications. I tried all types of physical therapy, all types of different stuff. And then once I just learned that it was my subconscious mind trying to hide these emotions from me, and I
Yeah.
just addressed it, I figured I'm like, what am I resisting? What anger am I resisting? Like different things like that. Then all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah, it's really weird, man. Because it's like I notice it's like when I feel mentally good, I rarely feel in pain, you know? Or like,
Hmm.
or if I am, it's like something, like it's very something very clear and obvious, and it doesn't bother me that much. You know what I mean? But like when I'm not, those pains are horrible. It's so interesting. And like I noticed this especially too, like when I started to like really wanted to transition jobs and I was miserable at my job, like I just noticed like I started to realize how like crappy I felt every time I had to go to work. And like it would be so hard to get there and to like do it and to do it well. And it's like because
Hmm.
you don't want to do it and your brain's you're still expressing that even though you're going through it because of responsibility or whatever sense of obligation, or you have to, whatever. Yeah,
Hmm.
kind of amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the difficulties about modern life is we force ourselves to do a lot of stuff that we don't want to do. And I mean, I know for a fact I did this when I was a veterinarian. Like there were days where I would just be like, whatever it took, I would just push myself to get to the emergency center where I worked overnights by myself.
Yeah.
And because once I was there, then I would just have to do whatever I needed to do to make it through the morning so I could leave. But like literally, I just felt it in the pit of my stomach, just not wanting to be there and just forcing myself to do that. And yeah, it
You feel
was
like trapped when you're there too. It sucks. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's not a good feeling. And it's really interesting because like I think back like a lot of the existentialists they talk about authenticity. And a big part of that is like people think of it as like, oh, being your true self and all that. And that's true, it is. But a big part of that is like self-reflection and self-awareness, realizing like who you are and understanding like all these emotions, all these thoughts, all these things going on inside of you and separating out that real stuff that is you from all the external crap, the obligations, pressures, all that stuff from the outside world that's trying to tell you how to be so you can
Hmm.
actually express yourself in the right way. And it's
Yeah.
hard, because like there is so much pressure outside to tell us how to live our lives and how to be and what's the best way. I mean, literally everywhere you look, somebody's trying to tell you how to live your life. And, and if you're not doing it that way, you're wrong. And I think
Yeah.
yeah, it's really amazing, but it's really detrimental too to people's health.
That's great. When you were just saying that, I actually just had another insight. So, like, right before the pain started, because one of the things they talk about in this book is that, like, oftentimes you can have some type of incident that, like, the pain doesn't start then; it starts shortly afterwards because, like, you just try and get through this incident, and then afterwards, once you're through it, your body has to deal with it. And
Yeah, starts
so
processing it.
yeah, so like I actually so beginning of December, I went to a retreat that was like it was a mindfulness retreat, very opening. I felt I
Yeah.
felt like a lot of stuff, but it was a very good environment for it. And then right after that, I went on this trip. And as soon as I got there, I realized that I didn't want to be there. And I forced myself to stay there because I paid for it.
Yeah.
And I made it through that week. That was
I
literally
remember
like
that. Oh
hell.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 And then probably like a week or two after that is when the pain started.
Yeah, think about it though. Think about how many times in our lives we do stuff that we don't want to do because of some stupid sense of obligation or some stupid sense of, well, I already paid for it, whatever. And it's like sometimes, and it is tough because like sometimes like you have to do things you don't want to do. There are certain things like you have to do. And like it's important to learn how to like healthily get through those things and do them. On the other hand, though, there's a lot of crap where I think like maybe we should just be saying no to. And like I can tell you, there's clear times in my life where like I took on something I didn't, and I realized I don't want to do it, and then you say no, or you back out, and it's like the weight just feels like so much weight off your shoulders. It's insane, right? And like that feeling right there tells me that like I should not have been doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't even
Yeah.
have started it. It's like amazing.
Yep. Yeah.
But
That's
man,
crazy.
it's really weird how we do that, that we force ourselves through these things that we just should not be doing, or fail to make changes when we get those, feel that, like hate our
Mm-hmm.
job, like and stuff. Like how many people are just miserable because they are unwilling to change? And it's like, why do you want to live like that? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. So that's it.
There you have it though. Yeah, so we had ourself. It's very hard. It is hard to be a person. Talked about that before.
Yeah. I want a refund.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I want to do over. Well, there you have it. That's the Existential Stoic podcast. Listen wherever you get your podcasts. Check out us on YouTube as well. Please like, share, subscribe. It helps us out a lot. We'll be back later this week with another episode. Until then, though, later, Randy.
Later, man.